this forum today. Actually, this is a very great opportunity for us to interact in this very good morning today. And the title of my presentation in this forum is Sri Lankan Muslims' perspective on the contemporary crisis in Sri Lanka and the future ahead. Briefly, to make this presentation within 15 minutes time, I just trying to make it within the three questions. The first question is, how do Sri Lankan Muslims perceive the recent political protest in Sri Lanka? Particularly in post-civil war, Sri Lanka witnessed a surge in hate speech against Muslim, anti-halal campaign, and violent against in the different kind of the violent attacks on mosques and Muslim-owned businesses. With the incident reported in Darha town, Alugama, and Jindota. So these are the incidents were taken place in the post-civil war situation in the country. So these are the reasons why Muslims also impressed by the recent political protest, and they also with kind of the different expectation they have involved because of these reasons. Then another thing, the more recently after the Easter Sunday attack during Ramadan in 2019, Muslims in several towns in the northwestern province of Sri Lanka came under attack and detained more than 300 Muslims under Prevention of Terrorism Act, and it make a lot of trouble to their society. So, and we felt that what are the elements behind the using of the Muslim for the Easter Sunday attack? It is a very big question still in Sri Lankan politics and economy. Internationally also, it is a big question. And sadly, the Sri Lankan government has pursued a discriminatory policy agenda against Muslims, ranging from anti-Muslim laws to forced cremation. In the COVID situation, government introduced the law kind of the forced cremation, the death body of Muslim community, which is not allowed in their religion. So that is also another important reasons. And they introduce kind of the restrictions on nihabs and madrasas, dress codes and cultural things. Also, they face a restriction. This unjust treatment has led to calls for a ban on all international support for poor Muslims in the country. These are the basic reasons Muslims also fully supported and participated in the political protest to provide or make a political change in our country. Here you see what is the perspective on political protest of the Muslim. Muslim had expectation for structural change and new leadership. Muslim expected that they need a kind of the system change in Sri Lanka or structural changes in Sri Lanka to change the regime. And they thought the previous regime did many things, what I have mentioned right now, and discriminated them. So, and provide the room for the discrimination for them. Even they have the pull of the power and authority, but they couldn't, mitigate the effect against the Muslim. So that is why Muslim thought that through this Aragalaya or the political protest, it is possible to change for a structural change, and leadership also will change. And another important aspect that it will find this gathering, almost all the people and all the sectors and all the thoughts people gathered in this protest. So they thought resolution to social, cultural, and economic rights issues will be, eliminated. So they said they thought that they will enjoy the rights or fundamental rights. That is what they thought, and they participated in the protest. Then they believed in the possibility of dramatic ideological changes and social consensus. What I said earlier, all the people from the different ideology, they gathered in a one umbrella, and and with the consensus of all the society. So they believed that it will give a proper outcome or positive outcome for their stand, for their rights in this country. And another important aspect, Muslim politicians were also supported because they left sidelined in that previous regime. When they established a kind of the interim cabinet and all, they avoid Muslim to appoint any Muslim as a cabinet minister. So those are the grievances. Muslim politicians also behind the scene and supported for a Muslim society and support for an entire protest. So these are the basic reason and their perspective to involve in the present political protest of our country. Go to the second question. What is the contemporary perspective of Sri Lankan Muslims regarding the post-political protest situation in the country? They expected many things in the protest, but protest will make something they expected. But you see in the green color and the white letters, no structural changes, no any system change was taken place. A powerless leader has been promoted as powerful leader. A powerless leader, promoted through the parliamentary, he promoted as a prime minister, then president. Now he took over the full of the power and president controlling the state and everything. So this is Muslims were not expected due to the protest, but something different. The same, political scenario came again with the power of the parliament, and some unprecedented things also happened over there. No proper inclusive approach. The Muslim thought, there will be the inclusive approach in the post-protest due to the protest. What happened in the past history in each and every aspect, the Muslim mostly were not considered as a part and parcel of ethnic conflict and the all resolution process. In 1987, they couldn't consider these local, our national government and India also were not considered properly Muslim in that agreement. Then, in year 2002, memorandum of understanding in between government and LTT also, Muslim were not considered properly. And, in this scenario, today, in the post-protest situation, what Muslim felt that in the recent approach of our present president said before the last February 4th of our Independence Day, and he said that we are going to fully implement the 13th Amendment. But, he did not properly consider the Muslims. So they mostly consider that, seriously affected community, Tamils only, and mostly towards his concentration was on the northern province. So in that sense also, Muslims, they couldn't achieve the protest, the target of the protest. They are afraid. Then you see this point, not freedom from fear and wants. In the post-protest scenario or in the contemporary scenario, their fear increase and they are facing the challenges of the wants. These days, yesterday and today, they are facing the challenge that, this day which occurred in Sri Lanka, this Easter Sunday attack. But during this period, the conspiracy is working on all over the country that there is a suspicion, and this Sri Lankan government intelligence, predicted and released the notice that, or the news that Muslim mosque may attack, most probably in the area of Kandy, the Akurana, then nearby the Kelambu, the Spanandure area now targeted. So that is why the government, military and the police forces now provide full protect for the Muslim mosque. So what I'm trying to tell here, in this present scenario, Muslims' fear increased. So what before me, Professor K.T. Kanaselingam also presented several things that what is happening for their society, but same things happening to Muslim community. And importantly, you see, so freedom from wants, they are facing the bigger challenges in their wants. even for the feeding of their kids. And during the Ramadan period, in the past, before protest and the Easter Sunday attack, Muslim received millions of money from international community, particularly from Middle East, as a donation for their life, for this Muslim poor community in our country. But due to the previous ban, it could not fully relax in the post kind of the protest situation. So in that case also, Muslims are facing and lacking to receive international support. And the last point in this two question, question number 2, there are restrictions on businesses, including import, export, and other commercial activities. The Muslim community, mainly they are traders and entrepreneurs. Because of the restriction due to the economic crisis situation in our country, Muslims couldn't freely involve in import and export and their commercial activities. So those are the restrictions also they are facing in the contemporary crisis situation of the Sri Lanka. So we are moving to this third question now. You see, what is the future perspective of Sri Lankan Muslim regarding the aftermath of the political protest and the crisis in the country? This is the kind of when we look at the what is happening in our country and the perspective of the Muslims, when we say about the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka, our majority community, they are 74% Sinhalese, they are living in our country. Tamil, Muslim, and others, the minorities, are only 26% living in our country. What I'm trying to emphasize here, if our composition pattern, if we have a 60 majority and the 40 minority, it is possible to bargain and find out the resolution for this country. What from the perspective of Muslim intellectual, they are the view that it is very difficult to find out the resolution for ethnic conflict in this country. However, you see, there are several attempts were taken place in the past. In the future also, it is possible to take a kind of the attempt to find out the resolution for existing ethnic conflict in Sri Lanka. And the Muslims have the afraid from the perspective of the Muslim community, particularly the intellectual community, they are feeling that if India is a big neighbor and it is, providing a lot of assistance and support for the Sri Lankan government. So afraid that Muslims, the Modi government may not fully support for the Muslim community in Sri Lanka in the way of the resolution. And when we look at the other international elements, they are now playing and they are following kind of the international, relation theories and just saying, just not so full of interest, even during the end of the war period also. So Muslims also suspect that it is very difficult to find out the resolution to ethnic conflict of Sri Lanka due to the several reasons. And today, in this crisis situation, and Sri Lankan economy need the support of GSP Plus, generalized scheme of preference, that is, actually support for the Sri Lankan economy from the European Union. But what we found in the recent condition of European Union, that they asked the Sri Lankan government to abolish Prevention of Terrorism Act, which greatly affect Sri Lankan community during the wartime, even during the southern part of the agitation time also greatly affected the community. But you see, this European Union said abolish the PTA, Prevention of Terrorism Act, but alternatively our government trying to introduce, that is what Mr. Satyamurthy before me very correctly pointed out, they are going to place the ATA, Anti-Terrorism Act, in the parliament on 25th. It is a very big issue. That is what Professor Amrithalingam also mentioned. If they place it, and if they make it as an act in our Sri Lanka, our country, it will really difficult to almost all the community, and particularly Muslim community, because this is going to target all the aspect. Because of the Aragale or the political protest, our government taking very interest to introduce this kind of the anti-terrorism act to control the society. What was in the political protest? People came to the street, particularly in the Colombo metropolitan area, all over the country, they gathered and did something against the wrong way of the government or the state of Sri Lanka. They are suspicion that in the future, now they have introduced kind of many things and increase the price and too much of the difficulties imposed on the people of Sri Lanka today. So because of that, people may come to the street, or that is why they are going to introduce ATA. So that is also Muslim concern, that if they make it a law, so if even with the changes or even with some of the removal of some part of the ATA, if they make it as an act, it will definitely damage the Muslim community. And another thing, according to the GSP Plus and the European Union demand, Muslim marriage and divorce act or law also will be changed, that will affect the Muslim community's faith. And other cultural and the restriction, they are every day facing kind of the different cultural restriction in this country. The Muslims are afraid in the future that their cultural right will question in this country because of the growing scenario. Then I clearly explained earlier that economic rights and their export, import, business, and all the things are now also facing challenge. But if the government, in the way of the government and the country's crisis situation, they are feeling that, Muslims are feeling that it will make trouble for their economic rights. Finally, they don't have the much of the confidence. In the previously, in the post-independence era, continuously Muslim join with majoritarian political parties and try to capture and get benefit for their sake of their community continuously. But you see, in the post-Civil War situation, they badly targeted and they have excluded, even in the post-independent era, sometimes they excluded, but in the post-Civil War era, they excluded from the state system, particularly from the government or the arrangement of the cabinet. Sometime they have excluded, so they are afraid about their future. These are the three important aspects that I want to discuss with you. Why Muslim involved in the political protest? What were their expectations? And what is happening? They expected, importantly, for the system or the structural changes, but that is not happening in this country. In the future also, because of the things that are happening in the country, that will make trouble for their future. Those are the challenges what expressed by the Muslim community. These are the things I want to make a talk on this forum in front of this intellectual group on the title of Sri Lankan Muslims: Perspective on the Contemporary Crisis in Sri Lanka and the Future Ahead. Thank you very much for listening.